Only the Coalition will deliver a full national disability insurance scheme.
We have to wait till we're in surplus to get it.
In strong surplus.
There you have it. That there was Joe Hockey, the Shadow Treasurer, talking about only the Coalition will deliver an NDIS, but only once we're in a strong surplus. And judging by the economic news that we saw today in relation to the nature of the global economy, the continuing risk of the fiscal cliff in the United States, and of course what's happening domestically with problems with productivity, with problems with business investment, and of course the rates cut, which governments always spruik as a good thing, but at the end of the day it might be a good thing for households with debt. It's never a good thing for pensioners, or more particularly I should say, it's never a good thing for self-funded retirees who are trying to finance their way through their retirement. And it also is a sign that the economy rather is tanking a little bit. Anyway, to discuss some of these economic issues and a whole host of other things that have been in the mix today as well as the last few days, we are joined out of Queensland by Liberal Party MP Andrew Laming. Thanks for your company. And we're also joined out of Melbourne. I was keeping my directors on their toes because I reversed the order there. We're joined out of Melbourne by Mr Danby, Labor MP. Michael, thanks for your company as well. And we're joined out of Sydney by our twin political strategists, or at least veteran political strategists for the Labor Party, Bruce Hawker. I'm not calling you guys old, don't worry. And Ian Court-Lang for the Liberal Party, who was Griner's chief strategist as well. Welcome to the program, one and all. Now, before we move into the minutiae of strategy, where I'll go to our twin experts on that, I want to start with you, Andrew Laming. Joe Hockey talks about only the Coalition can deliver an NDIS. Let's be honest, he doesn't exactly sound like he's running at a fast pace to try to get to it. Strong surplus, that's not likely to be something that's in play for a very long time.
Well, Peter, it's the Coalition objective to do that. And remember that the $7 billion a year that we pay in interest rates would actually fund the NDIS right now. We don't have that because we have a Labor government, $170 billion.
Yeah, but you're looking backwards, you're not
borrowing.
looking forwards. You're looking backwards, looking forwards, which is what people that have a disability want to see this thing come into place. Labor says it's going to happen. They haven't told us how they're going to fund it, of course. Probably with more debt would be my assumption, but I'll give Michael Danby a chance to respond. But from your side, you're not going to do it until there's a strong surplus. That means you're probably not going to do it for a very, very long time.
Well, we're picking up the mess, obviously, that we inherit from Labor. You simply can't airbrush that away. This is a government that doesn't give you value for money. It's a government that most people don't trust. It won't be their Christmas wish, but it will certainly be a New Year's resolution to be removing this current federal government next year when they can.
Michael Danby, I think we all know that I'm going to want to talk to you about Palestine and the vote that I can't imagine that you were even happy with the abstention on. But before we get to that, on the NDIS, I mean, at the end of the day, Labor says it's going to do this. Isn't this just a classic case of reliving Bob Hawke's "No child will be living in poverty by 1990" promise? I mean, there's nothing behind this. How are you going to fund it?
Well, the Prime Minister's announced that she'll make savings of $1 billion and that we'll fund this over the beginning of it over the next 4 years. This is something that carers and people with disability in electorates around Australia are really looking forward to. It's one of those great Labor social reforms like Medicare. Don't tell me it's like Bob Hawke promising that everyone will not live in poverty by 1990. We'll begin it. We'll make savings, and Australia, after all, has done a lot better as far as economic growth than anywhere else in the world. And as we get back into surplus, we'll start to fund it more and more.
Yeah, but Mr Danby, you say that carers and people suffering with disability are looking forward to it. I say that they've got their hopes up. Yes, the government's funding a trial to the tune of $1 billion over 4 years, but the actual scheme is going to cost more than 10 times that, according to the estimates that we're seeing now, and that's just per year. We don't see the money for that. The Coalition is saying we need a strong surplus. We need more than a strong surplus to fund it. I mean, is there any guarantee this is going to happen in a timely manner?
Well, what do you mean by a timely manner? It's got to begin somewhere. I think $1 billion over 4 years is a good start. We will make the savings from current expenditure. The Prime Minister has said very clearly today that she'll make judicious cuts. And as I say, this is something that a big, rich country like Australia, the 12th biggest economy in the world, member of the G20, can afford in the long term, and we owe it to people with disabilities and the people who look after them.
Ian and Bruce, can I put you guys in a cage and let you battle it out on this one from the respective perspectives that you bring to it? I mean, at the end of the day, strategically, is this a winner for the Labor Party, do you think, to be able to announce this and therefore get the kudos of it, even if there are funding difficulties going forward? Or is it a loser for the Labor Party because it gets up hopes and it gives an opportunity to the opposition to unpick it?
Well, I think in the cage, Bruce and I would probably both see this as it's base building. I think Labor has to build this base. You've seen it again today, and topics we'll talk about going forward. And if you're in the opposition, you've got to embrace it, because it's so much it's an issue. It's a Bambi issue. You can't knock Bambi. I think you'll have a trial for sure. You've got the opposition already resiling away from it, saying, it must be when there's a major surplus. For the people with disabilities, obviously we as a developed nation, we as a rich nation should have it as an aspiration, but I just hope we don't hold their hopes too high, because I think at the beginning it's a base building exercise, and Liberals can't eschew it because it's just Bambi.
Bruce Hawker, does that mean that Joe Hockey's making a mistake when he talks about a strong surplus because it just puts doubt in people's minds?
Absolutely. A couple of points. I think that one of the big reasons why Labor has had something of a resurgence in the last few months has been because it's been seen to return to Labor values, and I can't state too highly how important the NDIS is in that context. It is a strong Labor initiative. In some ways it's up there with Medicare as being the sort of thing that you would expect of a Labor government, and it's been presented that way, and I think the public sees it in that light. So much so, of course, that Tony Abbott has said that in respect of this project and this scheme, he is Dr. Yes. That's his way of describing it. He says they're going to get there. I think the statement by Joe Hockey tonight, though, is quite revelatory, really, and I've been thinking for some time that Mitch Fifield and Tony Abbott have sort of been playing around with their words a bit to give them a bit of wriggle room, and tonight Joe Hockey's really belled the cat. What this is saying is, look, if we get to a strong surplus, then we, the Liberal Party, will go ahead with the NDIS. If I was any one of the 400,000 people out there tonight who have disabilities of one form or another, I would be feeling very anxious about the opposition's commitment to it. I'm not trying to be partisan about it. I just think when you say things like that, there has to be a strong surplus, then you're leading with your chin, and that's what Joe Hockey's done.
Well, Bruce, you might not be trying to be partisan, but I think we all know that you can't help yourself. But quick question, though, if I can, for you. I mean, in February, you were saying that the Prime Minister should resign in relation to Kevin Rudd coming back into the leadership. We get to the end of the year. Labor has recovered in the polls. Were you wrong?
Well, I think Labor has come back somewhat in the polls. We're still, I'm sorry to say, a good 2 points behind where we were at the last election campaign. And the recovery is very patchy. So do you think you'd be better
if you had Kevin Rudd there now rather than Julia Gillard?
Well, I think Kevin Rudd, poll after poll has shown that he is by far the most popular politician in the country. And the second most popular politician in the country is Malcolm Turnbull. My concern is that at the end of the day, the Liberal Party still have something of a trump card in that if Abbott continues to go poorly, and he has gone poorly in the last few months, then they always have the option of changing their leader to somebody who is very popular with the electorate. We saw that in the poll, the Galaxy poll that came out yesterday, in Malcolm Turnbull. So it's a very, very tough election yet for Labor to win. But what we do know is that Kevin Rudd is a very popular figure out in the public.
Well, let me ask Michael Danby about not so much Kevin Rudd, but Julia Gillard, the incumbent Prime Minister. What was she doing with this vote on Palestine? Going with the Victorian right, the likes of Senator Conroy and Bill Shorten, insisting that the Cabinet bend to her will, walking out of there and effectively getting rolled behind the scenes by Bob Carr and a conglomerate of people from the New South Wales right, and then not even telling the Victorian right, who felt as strongly as the likes of yourself did on this issue, before turning around and announcing to the party room that an abstention was the way that the Labor Party was going to go on this.
Oh, before I answer you, Peter, I've got to say the Prime Minister's strong performance at the end of the year has given a lot of us confidence all across the country, and I think the performance of various state governments, particularly in Queensland, mean that we can win seats like Ford and Brisbane, and I think this election is eminently winnable. Now, this decision was, in my view, regrettable. It's certainly silly, indeed delusional, to say that seats in Western Sydney can be won by throwing the Israelis under the bus. I mean, I think Senator Faulkner talked the truth
Is
today
that what you
when
think
he
we've done? We've
identified
thrown
corruption.
the Israelis under the bus?
Well, I mean, it's not as bad as that. But to say that this issue is going to fundamentally affect votes in Western Sydney, the issues there are many good people in the Labor Party in New South Wales, Paul House, Tony Burke, people like that. But you know, Faulkner's right. We've got to address the issues that are salient in people's minds. There's going to be months of ICAC. There's going to be all of the kinds of issues that New South Wales really needs to address. The reason why people in Western Sydney are voting against us is the lack of infrastructure. And that's not other people on the right around the country's fault who supported the Prime Minister on this Palestine issue. That's an issue that goes right back to New South Wales. And I think the Labor Party all around the country is going very strongly now, particularly in Queensland, particularly in Victoria, and we'll be looking to our friends in New South Wales to lift their game.
But Michael Danby, I've got to pull you up on the statement about, you know, throwing Israel under a bus, because if you say that it's not going to if you say that throwing Israel under a bus is not going to win back seats in Western Sydney, that implies surely that that is what we've done with abstaining on the UN vote.
Look, Peter, on any
you don't want to give us the grab, do you?
Any day in Syria, there are more people that were killed than were killed in that entire operation in Gaza. I think the concentration on this Israel-Palestine issue is frankly overboard. I don't think people in Western Sydney give us much care to it as people were saying were the reasons why we needed to go against our Prime Minister. I think Julia Gillard's really shown that she's tough. She's really shown that she's got the issues, the National Disability Insurance Scheme, all of the kinds of labour value issues that Bruce was talking about. And that's why we're back in the game in Queensland and Victoria and South Australia. And I just hope that all of those months of ICAC are not going to prevent us winning the next federal election.
All right, one and all, stay with us. We've got to take a commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about the economy, the interest rate cut and what it all means for Australia and each of you out there individually. I'm going to start with Andrew Lemming for the opposition's view. Back in a moment.
The more we use the internet, the more our current copper network is struggling to keep up. After all, it was originally designed for phones, not today's internet. The National Broadband Network is a network that can deliver our needs now and into the future. With technologies such as optic fibre directly to the home, the NBN will give us access to high-speed, reliable broadband and the possibilities of tomorrow. The National Broadband Network, connecting us to a better future. The rollout is already underway. To find out more, go to australia.gov.au/NBN. Authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
Une Stellar, toi, s'il vous plaît.
One night, Kmart invited a special bunch of people to recommend their favourite gifts for Christmas. And they found so much more to love with Kmart's famous low prices. Do you want irresistibly low prices every day at Christmas? Okay.
This is the common Like It or Lump It holiday package. And this is the latest in worldwide choice. Here you can select from every available package option to any destination on any date. Here you don't have that flexibility. Here you can alter flights and hotel rooms to suit. Here you can't. To see how much you're now free to save, get in to webjet.com.au. labor.gov.au.
It makes sense that when businesses buy in bulk, they save. But if you see your Holden dealer before December 16, you'll save too, with Holden's national fleet pricing for all, across a range of 2012 plated Holdens. Like the Marina CD hatch, now down to $15,585, or the Cruise CD, down to $19,913. See your Holden dealer before December 16 and save like a fleet buyer without being one, with Holden's national fleet pricing for all.
Welcome back. You're watching Showdown, where I'm joined by twin Liberal and Labor MPs. Well, they're not twins, obviously. Andrew Laming and Michael Danby joining us out of Queensland and Melbourne. And we're also joined by twin, again, not biologically, twin Labor and Liberal strategists, Bruce Hawker and Ian Court-Lang. I want to start with you, if I can, Andrew Laming, and bring you in on some of this economic data and information that we see coming out today. You know, yes, we've had an interest rate cut. That allows the government to spin that as a good thing, but it comes about because of a softening economy at the same time that we have difficulties in the world economy. Where does this leave Australia as far as both parties are concerned going forward, when we've got such weak issues for business and so forth?
Well, certainly an interest rate cut, if it's passed on, can be spun as both a win and a lose, depending on whether you hold a large home loan or not. But most importantly of all, I think people are associating the current federal government with waste and missed opportunities. I mean, you have union leaders living in $1.1 million homes in Sydney. Today we have the one strike on corruption policy of Senator Faulkner. I mean, are we coming out of sub-Saharan Africa? I thought that was how the whole world worked, but no, this is Labor's great new idea. So effectively, I think people structurally have hesitancies about ever re-electing this government again. They may crawl back to, you know, the high 40s, but getting the next point above that's going to be extremely hard, because these series of scandals, I believe, are going to follow, just like Hillary Clinton and Whitewater, are going to follow this Prime Minister all the way through to the next election, and that's a major problem for Labor.
By the same token, though, Andrew Laming, if I can ask you this, help me understand John Howard, his big line, you were part of the Howard government, was that interest rates will always be lower under a Liberal Party government, yet we now have interest rates back at historic lows. How do you square that circle?
Well, obviously they've been low during the GFC. They're low again for a number of macroeconomic reasons. But right now, I don't think Australians are associating a quarter of an interest rate cut or 25 basis points as a win or a lose. It depends on where you're sitting in the economy and you know what obligations you hold to financial institutions. But what people are really looking at is, has the mining boom been squandered? This will be an increasing question. Are we overtaxed with our 27 increased or new taxes in this country? And finally, when we do give money to government, what are we getting in return for it? And there's a real sense that a lot of that has gone in waste.
Ian Court-Lang and Bruce Hawker, can I ask you guys, in a sense, a crystal ball strategising question about, come the May budget, if the government is unable, because of the economic climate, to deliver the surplus that they've put so much political capital into delivering, where does that leave them? I mean, how do you, A, deal with it, and B, spin your way out of it? Bruce Hawker?
I think it'll be a difficult position if that were to happen, because Treasurer Wayne Swan has been completely unequivocal about his commitment to getting to a budget surplus. And I think he will get there come hell or high water for that reason. But it would be tricky. Having said that, sometimes I think that the medicine can be worse than the disease when it comes to actually getting to that position, because you can end up alienating a lot of interest groups along the way if you cut too deeply. So I don't think it would be an easy thing for the government to do, but there is probably a sense out there in the electorate anyway that, you know, the economic forecasts aren't all that great, with China softening somewhat over the last 12 to 18 months and our exports being a problem. But I still think it would be difficult if we didn't get there, but I'm pretty sure that Swan's going to make sure we do get there. But as I say, it could be a rather bitter pill.
Yeah, but if you can't get there, Ian Court-Lang, let me ask you, I mean, is this the sort of thing that strategists should be held to account for? You know, you don't allow your politicians to put themselves against the wall the way that Labor has, where if an economic downturn, for example, changes the circumstances such that you just can't get there, you don't leave yourself exposed as having made such a brutally frank promise.
I'm sure Wayne Swan at night sometimes hopes that Spain goes into a total retreat, so he's got an excuse. I don't think he can't get off that hook looking at the Australian domestic scene, and he needs one to get off. I think you've got to start the new year with the Prime Minister weakened as she was, not just by sort of the performance that she had and Julie Bishop chasing her, but weakened by her being rolled by Bob Carr. And you go into a very uncertain economic time where people aren't buying houses now, interest rates aren't going to make them collapsing, aren't going to make them move and feel more confident about themselves. And in going to an election year, I don't know of any time when you don't have, unless a person can demonstrate great leadership and being the whole party behind, although I hear Bruce and Michael tonight saying all the nice words, but I don't think she's all that secure. She doesn't look like a leader. If Swan doesn't get his surplus, I think that will look disastrous for them.
So do you actually think that there's a chance that there could be a change of leader on the Labor side ahead of the election, or is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I think you go home, people, they've all gone back to their electorates now, and they're sitting down with Stephanie, their wife, and she's saying, we've got 4 kids to put through school over the next 3 years, and that Rudd guy is an insurance policy for us. And, you can be as pure as you like, but I'm thinking of the kids and I'm thinking of the things going forward and your superannuation going. I still think there's a possibility of a Hawke-Hayden change, because if the primary vote, and I know Michael likes the two-party preferred now because it's closer, but if the primary vote gets down closer to 30 again, and you want to have an insurance policy, why wouldn't you, if you're a backbencher in Brisbane or a backbencher in Victoria or Western Australia, give Kevin a go, even if you didn't like him?
And Peter, the Germans, what if the trend happens? Let me just check those. Sorry, I just want to check. Yeah. What about the converse, Ian Courtlang? I mean, is it the same if the trend keeps going the way it is and Abbott finds himself behind rather than in front on the two-party vote? Does Malcolm Turnbull come into the equation, or is there a difference there? No,
I think the Liberal Party see Tony Abbott as having got them in the strongest position of any leader of the opposition. I think there's no chance in his being overthrown. People like Bruce and I, who like observing politics, it'd be very colourful if there was a double leadership change. We'd opine about it ad nauseum on your program, but I think the chances of that are remote, but I think on the other side there is still a chance.
Michael Danby, can I just bring you in? I want to go to our two politicians before we run out of time. Starting with you, a tweet that's come in that I think is worth getting political responses to says, I can imagine if the ALP win the election, they'll look at each other and say, what do we do? How do we fund our promises? Well, I actually think that's an issue for both sides of politics when you look at the amount of promises and the costs included in that. In your case, proactive promises. In the Coalition's case, sort of pulling back taxes like the carbon tax. How is Labor going to fund all of this if it does indeed win the next election?
Well, look, of course we're subject to the international economy and to whether the American economy goes off a financial cliff. I don't think they will. I must say, by the way, I was really flabbergasted at Andrew's attack on Hillary Clinton. But the Chinese are growing still at 7% plus, and I think there's every chance that the Australian economy has the ability to sort of grow out of this problem. What would Ian Courtlang and Andrew like us to do, though, to sort of be financially irresponsible and not try and stick to a budget surplus? Of course we want to sort of pay down the debt as well and introduce great schemes like the NDIS. The other thing we get no credit for is this massive deal on the Murray-Darling, which no other previous federal government's been able to get water flows back in that dying river system.
Let me jump in there if I can. I mean, that is true. That sort of wasn't referred to in the last parliamentary week, even though it was a significant reform, partly because of being overshadowed by AWU. But we're almost out of time, Andrew Laming. You get the last word here. Can I get you to respond on the whole economic side of things? Your promises to remove taxes are going to put the budget in as much peril, aren't they, as Labor's promises to enact more spending?
Our promises include genuine savings through a more efficient bureaucracy, which is something that hasn't been discussed tonight. Look, essentially, Labor will have increasing difficulty getting their message out, and Michael's acknowledged that because they structurally have a problem with credibility and with their leader. And so no matter what they do, what we are seeing is death by pilot program. We have NDIS on a pilot program, we've got welfare quarantine on a pilot program. Indigenous Affairs is effectively run now as pilot programs because they can't fund the real thing anymore. They're snookered on this promise around a surplus, and that's why they're not going to be getting much clear air at all. And I suspect it will go right through to the next election, which is only months away.
All right, Peter, well, we are out of time. There'll be Both leaders will be back, by the way. It'll be Abbott versus Gillard all the way through. So let's not live in what the Germans called a cloud cuckoo land.
Yeah, well, I suspect you're right on that as well. Now we will leave. What an appropriate way to end Showdown.
Who's living in cloud cuckoo
land? We're gentlemen, one and all, we are out of time. I appreciate all of your company. Andrew Laming out of Queensland, Michael Danby joining us out of Melbourne, and our twin political strategists joining us out of Sydney, Ian Court-Lang and Bruce Hawker. Thank you, one and all, for your company, and thank you for your company for watching. I will see you at the same time.